The house was new in every way that mattered to the realtor. Fresh paint still breathed out a chemical sweetness. The floors shone like mirrors, and the windows caught the sun, as if they had been waiting years for someone to look through them. Daniel noticed all of that, but what stayed with him was the silence. It was not the peaceful kind that settles after snowfall. It was a listening silence, stretched thin, as though the walls were holding their breath. He told himself it was nerves. First homes always felt strange. Empty rooms magnified your thoughts. Still, when he closed the front door behind him, the sound died too quickly, swallowed by something deeper than space. He unpacked slowly, placing furniture where it seemed natural, following the logic of light and outlets. The house responded by offering nothing back. No creaks, no groans, not even the friendly complaints of wood adjusting. When evening arrived, Daniel realized the quiet had grown heavier, like humidity before a storm. He cooked dinner and ate at the kitchen counter, noticing the way the overhead light left the corners dim. The hallway leading to the bedrooms looked longer at night, its end disappearing into shadow. He laughed at himself, turned on every light, and went to bed. Sleep did not come easily. The mattress felt unfamiliar, the ceiling too high. Sometime after midnight, Daniel heard footsteps above him. The sound was soft, careful, the weight of someone who knew exactly where to place their feet. He sat up, heart racing, then remembered the truth. There was no upstairs. The house was a single story, a clean, efficient layout designed for modern living. The footsteps continued, crossing from one end of the ceiling to the other. Daniel held his breath, counting each step until they stopped directly above his bed. The silence returned, thicker than before. Daniel waited for laughter, for a voice, for anything that would explain the noise. Nothing came. Eventually, exhaustion dragged him back to sleep. In the morning, sunlight poured in, as if the night had been a dream. He inspected the ceiling for signs of an attic hatch, a crawl space, something he might have missed. There was nothing. The blueprints from the realtor confirmed it. No attic. No access. Daniel told himself that new houses settled strangely. He went to work, letting routine scrub the fear from his mind. The second night, the footsteps returned earlier. This time they were closer, pacing back and forth, as though someone were deciding something. Daniel lay frozen, staring at the ceiling, sweat cooling on his skin. When the steps stopped, he heard something else. A slow dragging sound, like fabric pulled across plaster. It circled the room, tracing the perimeter, before stopping above the door. Daniel could not move. He did not sleep. By the third night, he was certain he was not alone. He set up his phone to record audio while he pretended to sleep. The sounds came, louder than before, accompanied by a faint whispering that made his teeth ache. When morning arrived, he played back the recording. There were footsteps, yes, but layered beneath them was something else. Breathing, not his. Slow, deliberate, and impossibly close. At the end of the recording, a voice spoke clearly, directly into the microphone. It said his name, not as a question, but as a statement. Daniel moved out that afternoon, leaving most of his belongings behind. The house went back on the market within a week, advertised as quiet and perfect for someone seeking peace. The second story began with excitement rather than fear. Mara had always wanted a place she could make her own, and the new house at the edge of the development felt like a promise. Everything was white and bright, a blank canvas waiting for color. The first night she slept there, she dreamed of rooms that did not exist. Hallways curved where there should have been straight lines. Doors opened onto staircases that spiraled downward forever. She woke with the taste of dust in her mouth and the certainty that she had been somewhere deep beneath the house. Mara laughed it off and went about painting, hanging pictures, filling the space with her life. The dreams continued, growing more vivid. She began to recognize landmarks in them. A crack in the wall shaped like a lightning bolt, a light fixture that flickered in a familiar rhythm. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes in the guest room, she noticed the crack. It was exactly where it had been in her dream. Her stomach tightened. She touched the wall, half expecting it to be cold. It felt warm, almost alive. That night, Mara woke to the sound of a door opening. She listened, counting the seconds between breaths, and heard footsteps moving through the house. She reached for her phone, ready to call for help, but something stopped her. The steps were wrong. Too even. Too calm. They followed the exact path she took every morning, from bedroom to kitchen, then back down the hall. She realized with horror that she knew this walk because she had practiced it in her dreams. The footsteps stopped outside her bedroom door. The handle turned slowly, inch by inch, without the sound of a latch. Mara squeezed her eyes shut. The door did not open. Instead, she heard a voice on the other side, speaking softly, rehearsing. It repeated phrases she had said earlier that day, mimicking her tone perfectly. When it finished, it whispered, again, and began from the start, improving each time. Days passed. Mara stopped sleeping. She noticed changes in the house. Doors that led to closets now opened into narrow corridors. Windows reflected rooms that were not behind her. The house was rearranging itself, learning her preferences, her habits. One evening, she came home to find the furniture moved. The couch faced a different wall. The table was closer to the door. Everything felt more efficient, more correct, as if someone else had decided how she should live. The final night, Mara followed the sound of her own voice into the basement, a space she rarely used. The light flickered on, revealing walls covered in sketches. They depicted her in every room of the house, sleeping, eating, painting, crying. At the center of the room stood a door she had never seen before. It was open. Inside was a bedroom identical to hers, down to the smallest detail. On the bed lay a woman who looked exactly like Mara, eyes open, smiling patiently. From behind her, the house spoke, using Mara's voice, and asked her to come in so they could trade places. No one saw Mara again, but neighbors sometimes noticed movement behind the windows, a woman who waved exactly like her, living a life that looked almost real. The third story belonged to a family who believed in fresh starts. The house was brand new, built where an old field had been cleared. The parents saw opportunity. The children saw adventure. On the first day, the youngest child, Eli, stood in the hallway and asked who the other kids were. His parents smiled and said there were no other kids yet. The neighborhood was still growing. Eli frowned and insisted he had heard them laughing inside the walls. Strange things happened in small, deniable ways. Toys went missing and reappeared in places no one remembered putting them. The baby monitor crackled with lullabies none of the parents recognized. At night, the children complained of someone sitting on their beds, making the mattress dip. The parents blamed imagination, stress, the adjustment to a new home. Eli began talking to someone named Thomas. He described him as being very thin and very quiet, with eyes that reflected light like glass. Thomas liked to play games that involved hiding. He always won. One afternoon, Eli led his sister to a corner of her room and pointed at the wall, telling her Thomas lived there. The wall sounded hollow when they knocked. The parents finally investigated when they found muddy footprints across the kitchen floor, too small to belong to any of their children. They followed the prints to the hallway, where they vanished into the wall. A contractor found nothing unusual. No gaps, no crawl spaces. Everything was solid. That night, the parents heard crying from the children's room. When they rushed in, they found Eli standing calmly in the corner, whispering. His siblings were asleep, unhurt. Eli turned and said Thomas was sad because the house was changing. Over the next week, cracks appeared in the walls, thin lines spreading like veins. The laughter grew louder, echoing through the vents. The parents packed bags, deciding to leave, but on the last night, the house seemed to wake fully. Doors slammed shut on their own. The lights went out. In the darkness, voices rose, dozens of them, children speaking over one another, begging not to be left alone again. The parents found Eli in the hallway, standing before a section of wall that had opened like a mouth. Inside was a space far larger than the house should allow, filled with shapes that moved and watched. Thomas stepped forward, no longer thin, his eyes no longer empty. He thanked Eli for bringing his family home. The parents tried to reach their son, but the floor pulled at their feet, dragging them closer to the opening. When morning came, the house was quiet. The family was gone. The development continued to grow, and the house remained perfect and new, waiting patiently for the next family to move in.